Good morning, everyone. It's Dr. Bill Williams on Wednesday of the 13th of December. Yeah, we're putting a timestamp on this one today because it's the week or so before Christmas. We're getting set for a big holiday blast. And I want to introduce to you today Michael Pomposello from Blue Polo Interactive. Michael's up in New York. He's ready for everything that goes on in New York City. Did you catch the Macy's Day Parade already?
Oh, for Thanksgiving for sure. And here's a great tip. I did this by accident. I had a friend in the city a few weeks ago. We went to see the Rockefeller Center tree before they lit it. And you can walk right up to the thing. There is no one around. But once that thing is lit, stay out of that area. It's going to be crazy.
It's kind of like a national monument. You better stay away.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, before they light it, a day or two before, you can go see the thing. You'll be the only person there. I fell on that by accident, but I highly recommend that strategy.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I love going up to the Rockefeller Center in the wintertime. That's just a beautiful place with the ice skating rink and all.
Yep. They have little shacks so you can have some hot cocoa. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, especially if you live in the concrete jungle.
Yeah. Yeah, it becomes a different world.
Well, we're so glad you're here today, Michael, and we want to find out all about what Blue Polo Interactive is. It sounds like you've got your horses, you've got your mallets, and you're on the field galloping along, but I bet that's not what you do.
Not physically, that's for sure.
Let's find out, what is Blue Polo Interactive, and why are you my star today?
Blue Polo Interactive is a full service digital agency. We have helped brands do anything digital under the sun, whether it's buying media on websites, email marketing, SEO, reputation marketing, and helping them get their reviews online in order, all the way down to partnering with influencers and influencer marketing, which we have found in the past few years is just such a great driver of business. And it's such a great driver that boosts all of your other marketing lines. That's really what we've been focusing the majority of our time on as an agency in the past few years.
You focused on influencer marketing. You say this is interesting to our audience, so we want to really hit hard on that one. What is the value of influencers to a company?
So much like reputation marketing, we were just talking about online reviews and review sites like Yelp. As a brand, any brand can go out and say anything about themselves. I remember a few years ago, I was in a store, just think about, one of these major chain stores. I was in there and the experience is terrible. The employees are underpaid. They don't care. You're trying to get some help. No one wants to help you. The product's not on the shelf. And then a few days later, I see an ad from the brand and they're like, we love you. We care. We're the best. And I'm like, I don't believe you. And it just kind of clicked in my mind about how nonsensical the premise of advertising is when it's coming directly from the brand. Now, where we see so much more value for brands is when we can go out and work with an industry leader, an expert, whether that's on the B2B front or in B2C, your typical consumer, a mom, a makeup expert, a lifestyle expert, whoever that is, and exposing them to a brand and having them give their firsthand review of what it's like to engage with that brand. It's so much more meaningful to the consumer to hear that from a voice that they trust, as opposed just from the brand spewing whatever they feel like saying that day.
Yeah. If I was looking to sell medicine, I'd definitely get Marcus Welby to sell for me instead of some of the jokers they put up there now. People need to trust.
Exactly.
Well, listen, you had a lot of experience and you grew your company quite nicely, I understand, but it must not have always been perfect. Tell us some failure story you had. What'd you learn from it as you grew, and how'd you recover?
I think overall, really, I forget who said, I don't know, I'm sure some celebrity that I'm blanking on said, fail faster and fail as quick as you can. And I'm not sure I can point to one individual thing, whether I'm sure there's a million times that has happened, but there have just been so many times where we look at advertising, and especially digital advertising, as the science that it is. And I think the whole premise of applying it as a science is applying the scientific method. And we're always going to have a control, and we're always going to have a variable, and one of those will always outperform the other. So we're constantly testing, we're constantly looking to find that failure of one didn't perform, even if it's the one we like. And trying to find those failures, learn from them, and move on. I think just in general, we do so many different things for so many different brands based on their specific needs. And I wouldn't personally call it a failure, but I think in this context, potentially one thing that we've done is spread ourselves too thin. And I think what we've learned now is that we can deliver so much more value now that we've really niched down mostly into the influencer field. We can still support all of our other business lines, but as I was saying earlier, having those influencer relationships help us deliver so much better on all of our other things. So I think really going from super broad to niching down a bit has really helped us deliver better results.
I kind of agree with you there. It takes a very special company to do everything well. And kind of in my field of business, dentistry, when I was flying high, I built my office as everything under one roof. And so I could perform every service. But when I looked at the ROI of what I actually did, the top 3 or 4 things were always much more productive. And the things at the bottom, which I actually promoted a lot and hung my hat as the expert in, I didn't really do that much of that particular service, but just being known as a all-in-one shop does bring in business, but you really do make your money in the specifics, don't you?
Yeah, I think the Pareto principle, I remember learning that in high school, and years later being thrown into the business world, realizing just how applicable that is, that 20% of your efforts are always going to drive 80% of your results. 20% of your services or dental services in your case are always going to drive 80% of your profits. So I think just kind of going in and knowing that ahead of time, and just kind of keeping your eyes open and your ears open, and feeling for those vibrations of what that's going to be, can help you be so receptive that, once you feel, hey, we're kind of in this rhythm, we're getting really good at this, you're open to, again, not looking at it as everything else was a failure, but hey, if we focus on this, everything else will be that much more successful.
But again, if you don't know what you're actually doing, if you don't have management by the numbers, if you don't do statistical analysis, what do you gain if you don't know what's making it? So in your business, you have quite a good statistical analysis, I guess.
My background is technology. So really a lot of what I like to do is just make sure everything is going into some kind of a system. Even if we're not necessarily analyzing it or crunching it at that point in time, it's so much better to have more data than less data. So it's not an ongoing thing that we're constantly doing, but I'd always say, if you can store the data somewhere of, we did this, here were the results, we did this, here were the results. I found so many opportunities where we can look back and go, oh man, someone wants to do this. We did this 3 years ago. How did that go? What were our learnings? And we can go back and pull that data. So it's not a constant, but again, just housing that data opens the door for us to do it whenever we need to do it.
Absolutely. So if you look at all the people you serve as clients, what are some of the common things they do that cause them to fail?
Oh man, I think the number one thing that causes failure, and just to slightly redefine failure, as I was just saying, if we're doing, a scientific experiment per the scientific method, we're going to have a control and a variable, and one of those by definition is going to fail. I think the number one thing that scares me is when clients want to come with too small of a budget, or even slightly too small of a vision, to where we can't run enough testing, where we can't find those failures. So, I had a brand come to us a few years ago and say, this is what we've done, this is how we've always done it, we're going to bring you in and you're going to do these things, and that's it. okay, I'll take on that work of just kind of being the manager, but we're not going to find you better opportunities. We're not going to find you these better winners if you're either tying our hands or not supplying sufficient budget for us to take your control and test it against new variables. So I think those are two of the top three easily, is just not being willing to invest enough budget and resources into testing, or bringing a preconceived notion of what is success and what is going to work, and this is how we've always done it, so this is how we always want to do it. Again, you're just tying your hands to not learning something new. I think number three is just an aversion to testing and an aversion to new things in general. It's just I understand the fear, and I understand, especially because we work with we work with really large brands who will come to us and just throw a bunch of money and say, here's what we want, you make it happen, and they're awesome to work with. And we'll work with these smaller companies who, again, it's their baby, and this is how we've always done it. And I think for them, they're often setting themselves up for failure. And in this case, failure might not be losing the business, which is their biggest fear, but rather not seeing the growth that they're able to see because they're too scared to take that jump.
I really identify with that. Being in the dental profession and being in the marketing side of it, also helping people grow their practices, we would often talk about their budget and how much they had. And of course, a dentist office is typically a mom and pop show. It's a small business, and they don't have budgets that can entice a big company to go in there and do anything exciting. Like Blue Polo would probably look for enterprise level companies, right? Not the mom and pops. And your budget to test and measure and to do something nice for a single office is just impossible. So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I actually, I was at my dentist office and they were asking me what I do. And similarly, they were like, well, can you do this for us? Well, my number one question, well, what does your budget look like? What are you doing now? I learned a lot about where they're spending, where it's working, whatever. And I was like, man, like, you're cool. I'm cool. Like, we know business. I'd love to go to lunch. Maybe I can point you in the right direction. But, if your goal right now is just, I'm going to spend $1,500 a month on ZocDoc, and that's working for me, and that's what I want to keep doing. Again, you don't need to hire me to tell you to either do what you're going to do, or hire me to tell you, let's try something different, and then we're going to butt heads.
Yeah. The budget is just a ramification of how much production one dentist can do. You just can't do more than a certain amount. I would say this, though, once you become a bigger practice, you do quickly get the ability to dominate your field in your area. Mm-hmm. And I found that was true. Once I started growing my second practice, I went from 0 to 5 million in about 10 years. And at 5 million, awesome. We were very dominant compared to when most practices are 800 to 1 million in dentistry for a solo practice. And so when you get to numbers that can scale in any business, you do have the ability to hire professional managers like yourself.
Yeah. Awesome.
Now, what about motivation? What keeps you going? You've been successful. You're probably don't even need to work. You probably just do it because you like it, right?
That were the case. But I do enjoy it. And it is really fun meeting different people, meeting different brands, learning different problems, and kind of putting your problem solving cap on. As my business partner loves to say, I just said that, and that's fresh out of his mouth. But I think when I was coming into the career space, out of school, my background, as I said, was in IT. And I loved kind of cybersecurity and the challenges it presented, because really the goal is there's a big wall here, and how are you going to get through it? Are you going to, take a jackhammer and push through it, or are you going to climb over it? And my absolute favorite thing in the world of cybersecurity is realizing, okay, yeah, there's this huge wall here, but somewhere around the back is some little rickety chain link fence, and there's some little, padlock, and maybe we can just break that. Or my personal favorite can I wind up there and find the guard and, oh, I'm locked out, have the guard open the key for me. No, I got past this huge wall that they put up just because I nicely asked, hey, can I come in over here? Oh, thank you so much. And I realized that my passion for kind of solving these seemingly insurmountable problems, where I was going in the IT field was just not for me. And as I always say, I fell so in love with the Hollywoodized version of what I wanted to do, of, whether it's you're working in law enforcement or you're working in corporate and you have ownership of that task from start to finish, of here's the problem, you dig in, you do the problem solving, you do the legwork. And the more I understood about the industry, the more I realized it's so sectionalized. And really, what is the job going to be for me? Someone's going to come, drop a hard drive on my desk. I'm going to stare at some zeros and ones, find the anomaly, write a report on it, spit that out, and they're going to hand me a new hard drive. And I said that I could do that. I would be great at it. It's just not for me. I have way too big of a personality and way too much of a thirst to solve these big problems than to do the job I could be good at. I could stare at the zeros and ones. I could find the anomalies. But I think what motivates me is I love hearing these problems and I love solving them. And as you and I were just talking about, we're starting to look at, as an agency, obviously we can do this for our clients, but can we go out and find companies that are on the open marketplace for sale where we can come and solve their problems, which we have all the business and marketing know how to do. We have the pro forma from ONet agency, and solve their problems in a big way where we're capturing the upside. We have the equity as opposed to us just doing it for the brand and we get paid out as a service vendor.
So you're going from a hacker to merger acquisition kind of format.
It's all hacking at the end of the day. I think in its truest form, hacking is so much less of, again, trying to crunch through those zeros and ones, and so much more of, hey, there's this giant wall in front of me. What's the best way to get around it? What's the easiest way to get around it?
Yeah, the picture I get when you start talking about that giant wall and getting around it is Tom and Jerry, the little mouse that went through the bottom and always got the cheese.
Yep.
Tell me about your company motto, Blue Polo Interactive.
So on our influencer side, we always say that we're human first and we're data driven. And those two things are so crucially important. And really this applies to any type of advertising, but we learned it from dealing with influencers. And the first part of that is we're human first in the influencer space. And this is something I'm constantly banging my head against the wall, trying to explain to brands who are new to dealing with influencers. Brands love programmatic advertising and are so spoiled by it. We can take a creative and we can put it here and we can put it there and we can do it all at the push of a button. And it spits out this report and everyone's happy and we all go sing Kumbaya around the fireplace. And they want all of that trust that you and I spoke about of dealing with the influencers. And really what brings that trust is the fact that these are humans with human emotions and human feelings on things. But what they don't love is that we have to play with humans. My team has to go out and find people and we have to work on their schedule, and we can set deadlines and set expectations. And we've gotten really good at this until we're blue in the face. But at the end of the day, I was working with an influencer and they stopped responding to my emails and got back to me weeks later after blowing a deadline. Why? Because their father died. Okay, well, now I have a brand breathing down my back of, why can't you deliver? Why can't you deliver? Why isn't our media up? I'm sure there's a good reason for it because I've done this a million times before, and sometimes there isn't, but more often than not, there's a very human reason for why this human is behaving a certain way. And I think that's that's the number one thing that we try to get brands on board with is, if you want to benefit from the human connection that these people are providing, you have to offer them the humanity. And remember to not treat them like your programmatic advertising. And I call myself the whipping boy because I'm here to be that buffer of if the brand wants to call me and yell and scream and say, hey, all this stuff is behind, that's fine. And then my team puts on our kid gloves and we'll go to the influencer and treat them, with the care and compassion they deserve. So the brand winds up feeling like they got to be in charge. They get all the great results. The influencer feels like they were treated with dignity, and that leads to them producing better results. So that's the human first side, and that's so important. We've learned it from influencers. I mean, it's so important in just business day to day. Of if someone's not being themselves, it's probably not because they're trying to do something wrong. It's probably just a behind the scenes thing. And the more you get into the empathetic, trying to understand that, the better you typically are in the business world. And the data-driven side kind of speaks for itself, but we've seen so many brands in the influencer space get the human part, get the, hey, she looks like what our consumers look like, so we should partner with her. Okay, yes, that logically makes sense. But did you check the data first to make sure this woman is reaching the audience that you think she is? We had a major retailer tell us they did exactly that. They found someone. She's amazing. She's here in the US. We think she's the look of our brand. We spent 5 figures sponsoring her. We don't know why we got 0 results. And then we asked her why. Well, it turns out even though she's in the US speaking English, her entire audience is in Germany. Why? I don't know. She doesn't really know. But if they would have just looked at the data beforehand, they could have saved themselves a 5-figure failure. So the humanity comes first, and that is the number one thing that we really emphasize in our business across all lines, but it's particularly in play with the influencers, and it always has to be data driven. Otherwise, you would just go light some money on fire.
So that's a very interesting point of view, the data driven and the human side connected together. And you call yourself Influencer Connect, meaning that you are really the middleman that connects the two together, the brand and what you call the pre-vetted blogger. That means you check them out. You know who you got, what their strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah, and we know all the data, which is crucial for understanding their audience.
What about the time where an influencer rises in stature, and do they rise above the company they represent at some point? Do they become more influential than the company can afford, or does the company always supersede any individual influencer?
Oh, we've seen that time and time again, where we'll work with someone who, and they'll blow up. Right now, mid-December, this is when we're doing renewals for our advertisers of who did we work with last year. Let's look at the measurements. Who performed really well? Great. Let's rebook them for next year. And the number one thing we'll try to do on behalf of our brands is, hey, you performed great at this budget level. Let's keep you at this budget level. And some people say yes, and the brands love that. But more often than not, the influencer will go, well, yes, but here, let's look at my growth, and let's look at, can I deliver more for you? And if I can, I would like to be paid more for that. And that's an example where we'll have to go back to the brand, and as long as the argument is valid. I've had people where what happens? Did their reach blow up? No. What happened is their ego blew up, and they think they're bigger than they are. So now they want more money. Well, can you deliver more to the advertiser? No, but I feel like I'm worth more. Well, I can't go make that argument. So this becomes a take it or leave it. But oftentimes when the person does grow and can offer more, measured quantitative growth, we can get them more budget. But I think in both ways, there are times where they have physically grown to where it's no longer in the budget for the brand, or it's just kind of an ego growth where they want more money, but they're not delivering more results, to where the brand says, hey, we can work with you where you were, or you got to take it or leave it.
Yeah, and that gives me a thought. Do you prefer to work with celebrities who have like an automatic audience recognition, name recognition, trust, or do you prefer to work with unknowns and bring them up because they fit the avatar of the company's target market?
I really don't have a preference. I wish I did. There is so much value in both of those. And oftentimes when I'm writing a plan for a client, we'll try to give them people who kind of span the gamut. And a big part of why is, regardless of what I say today, is, I just closed out for a probably Fortune 1000 client, did a product launch and said, here were our things. Celebrities worked so well for you. Again, if our hypothesis would have been, if we could have formed a hypothesis, this would not have been it. But that's why we test, and that's why we spread your budget across smaller people, mid-sized people, and these larger celebrities, so that if our guess is wrong, we can still deliver tremendous results. So for that brand, in that timing, these celebrities delivered massively outweighed performance. But the brand before that, it was smaller influencers who delivered outweighed performance. So really, what's so common is at the end of a campaign, I'll write up a whole narrative of, here's what worked, here's why we think it worked, and here's what we would suggest you do in the future. I'll typically end all of these narratives with, here's what worked for you. This is what worked, and here's why we think it worked right now. For right now, by all means, lean into your celebrities, but this isn't always going to work, and this isn't necessarily going to work in the future. And that's why we would always suggest diversifying your influencer portfolio, because regardless of what's working at that given point in time, when you're at the mercy of the social platform's algorithm, you're going to have it on your plan and you're going to be covered.
I trained with J. Conrad Livingston and was certified as a guerrilla marketing instructor back in the 90s and the 2000s. I was building my practice based on his book, Guerrilla Marketing. And I found that one of the things he said that really spoke to me was, be seen everywhere all the time. And so we were multi-channel marketing as a dentist. And you couldn't turn around in our local area without seeing something I was doing, putting up. And we became champions of something I call the 7 mountain concept of marketing, where you dominate every area of your social existence, like the business community, the education community, the religious community, the arts and entertainment industry. And as you step through the different levels of involvement in each of these areas, you become the one dentist that they think about when they need help. And so that was kind of our philosophy of how we grew. That was awesome. Our secret success. What do you have as your success model that you used, to help gain promotion by the affiliate group?
Unfortunately, you cut out. Can you just repeat the last part of the question?
Yeah, what do you do that's your secret sauce for helping a company utilize their affiliates to the max?
I think so much of this comes back to a point that I've made throughout this, which is it's all science and it always comes down to testing. And for us, I really think that is brands that are open to advertising strategy, of, like if you had a dental practice back in the 90s, what's typical dentist advertising? The phone book, the maybe a billboard. And it's so exciting for us to come in and work with a brand and say, okay, everyone's doing this. Okay, we can do that for you, but let's also try something, a little bit outside, the lines, and that sounds super exciting, but sometimes it's as simple as so many brands that are trying to reach young adults. I'm 33. I think I'm a great example. I'd say like 30s to mid 40s are so scared of doing anything on TikTok because they've always been told that's where the 13 to 18-year-old crowd hangs out. That is where the 13 to 18-year-old crowd hangs out. But in the past few years, the audience that is over 18 has outsized the audience that's under 18. But because that's still so unknown, the opportunity is, it's like a gold mine right now. No one else is doing that. So that's where there's a huge opportunity. And for us, it's really just us trying to educate brands. It's okay. You can be seen there. It is not a bad thing. And I think for us, just trying to get brands to step a little bit outside of their comfort zone and not just do the playbook of this is what they're doing, so that's what we want to do too. But at the end of the day, it always goes back to the point that I made of it's testing. And I'm so okay with if we do that and that's not performing and Instagram is outperforming that, cool. We tried it. Awesome. Let's dive back into Instagram. But you're never going to know if you don't test.
Yeah, it's true that you need to know who your ideal client is, whether it's on the buy side or the sell side. Your affiliate person, your influencer person, or the other side, the client that's selling the product, the big company that's hiring the influencer. So who's your ideal client on each side?
Our ideal client on the side is native. The so is willing to try something a little bit new and just has that is receptive to doing those things. And again, they have to have the budget. If you're a dentist office and I say we want $10,000 because we're going to put 5 here and 5 there, and if this $5,000 doesn't shake out the way we hope, if that's going to ruin your practice, I'm not going to do that to you. On the influencer side, who is ideal? This goes right back to what I was saying first of all, we're not going to know who's ideal until we have the client in front of us and understand what their goals are. For us to look at the data and figure out from a data standpoint, this is where your audience is, this is who they're watching, and this is why this person from a human standpoint makes sense. But also, I wouldn't want to pigeonhole a brand into, just because this is what your perfect person looks like. As I said, I just did a thing and celebrities performed really well. My takeaway from that isn't I'm going to turn to my next brand client and say, we're only going to work with celebrities because we're algorithm. So for us, want to pigeonhole ourselves into saying who's ideal, I would want to say we'd want to understand the data, but we would still want to spread that across, small influencers, mid-sized influencers, and celebrities to find those winners and continue testing from there.
Yeah. The way you find the clients is also a question. As a marketing company, you would think you know exactly how to do that and can just snap your fingers and the clients show up, but that's not always the case. What's your technique of finding the clients and the influencers?
Two different things. On the client side, so much of what we do is partner with typically pretty big agencies that are very, very good at what they do, but lack the niche expertise that we have. And we've gotten into work and had the absolute pleasure of working with tremendous brands who the agency had the know-how to say, we need this, and had the wisdom to say, we're not good enough to do it. Let's bring you in. So partnering with larger agencies and agencies that have the client roster who just don't want to get or they don't want to be the wing boys, I like to say. The nitty gritty of the relationship management. For us, we can support their entire book of business. They look good, we look good, and we get to thrive at doing what we do. How do we find the influencers? We aggregate a lot of data about social profiles, who they are, who they engage with, who their audience is, and typically work backwards from their audience. So I just had a client 2 days ago. They're looking to work with channels that reach 65% female audiences with a majority US based audience, typically a younger woman. They have a sense of what that looks like. We can go into a platform that we've built, plug in those exact numbers. It spit out a list of here's 500 YouTube channels that fit that criteria. And my team goes and introduces the possibility of working with this advertiser to each of them. We field all their questions, work through their budgetary requirements, and work that down to the 5 perfect channels that are going to be a great fit for our client.
Yeah, that gives a lot of hope to a lot of YouTubers out there that they can be found. Is there a central place where you go and look for these particular YouTubers or TikTokers?
We have a lot of in-house data that we've aggregated over the years. And as I've said, I'm just very much in the habit of writing down our data and warehousing it. So after doing this for 13 years, we can also go into our database and say, if we wanted to do this, what have we done in the past where it's delivered great results? Have that spit out some people, and we can kind of model based on that too.
Yeah, you might even go into podcast and catalog podcasts nowadays because they're such vital growth areas.
Yeah, and it's really on the long tail. I was just at the IAB podcast up front a few months ago, and one presentation really was talking about how all of the podcast advertisers are all sponsoring kind of the same 20 podcasts because that's where the majority of the audience is. But there's so many challenges with that. And it's, one argument they were making is, well, now these big producers are shoving in so many ads that you're kind of getting lost in the shuffle, but you can reach the majority of those audiences by going to smaller podcasts and aggregating those over time. That was just such a great takeaway. I took away from it is it's so easy, and every brand wants to do the easy thing and be seen with the big guy and, we sponsor so-and-so or whatever, but you can probably get bigger, better results by going and working with the smaller players. If nothing more, and I didn't know this because when we sponsor an influencer, let's say on YouTube, there's one ad in the thing in their video or whatever they've created. And in podcasts, I'm so not used to, what do you mean there's 8 ads in an episode? And that's what they were talking about with ad load is, well, you're going to get lost in the shuffle. Whoa, I'm not used to anything getting lost in the shuffle. I'm so used to being on the other side. And that was such a good case for working with smaller podcasters is they're only going to put 1, maybe 2 ads in. So you're on the money on that. That's a recent learning of mine.
Yeah, everybody's waiting for my ad to show up here on this one, but it hasn't showed up yet. We're small, but we're agile. Hey, tell me about your well-defined product. What do you offer?
So what's really the best defined for us is our influencer offering. Really, at different budget levels, clients can come to us and say, I'm launching a product. I have a product. It's in the market. I have met our best client has already run Google ads, social ads, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, and is saying, I have all my learnings from these channels. I'm getting to a point where I'm maxed out. I need to be doing podcasts, radio, influencer. Well, I'm not going to go out and buy radio. Other people can go buy your podcast, but on the influencer front, we can take all of your learnings from what you've done on social ad buying and understanding what audiences work best and what audiences respond best to your products. And as I said, we can take that budget, plug it into our system, pair you with the perfect influencers, and for our client, make it just, other than the fact that there is a human element to it, make it almost as seamless as buying social ads, where we will do all of the human management of it, but also all of the data management, all of the management of understanding which who performed best, why, building out new tests and all of that. So just as you would bring in an SEM firm to manage your paid social, your paid Google. We can manage all of that for paid influencer.
That's very good. I think you've got a well-defined product list. I don't know if you've ever done this one. I want to ask because it's kind of the one that I'm familiar with for our particular company. Do you have affiliate programs where people will actually be the influencer for the company that they're an affiliate for, and they get a commission off of all sales that come through their affiliate links that they sell as they do their podcast or their social media post?
So, I mean, way back in my day, I was a full-time affiliate. That was kind of my introduction to the marketing space and how I learned, obviously, the ins and outs of testing and the importance of that. That's rooted in my background. But we really don't work with brands in that capacity where they would be doing rev share with an influencer. We have done it. We will sometimes do it. But really, we're at the point where the brands and the influencers we're working with just want to work straight off of basically a flat media buy. Typically, smaller influencers who are still getting their feet wet will be very receptive to, I'll do this with no money up front and I'll take more on the upside. But the caliber and the volume that we do, they just kind of want to see I'm going to plug you in and I want to get this many dollars for it. So that's where our expertise comes in of optimizing those budget levels and optimizing the data to make sure that's a perfect fit. Because unlike the affiliate model where there's no risk for the end advertiser, the advertiser is assuming a lot more of the risk here. And that's why we're going to come in and plug away at making sure we're minimizing that risk for them.
Gotcha. So if you're an affiliate, not an affiliate, but if you're an influencer and you're taking a salary, pretty much, not a commission per sale, but a salary for a particular company in a period of time, what kind of income will typically be generated by your influencer person who's in that space and does that full time?
Good question. I mean, I think full-time people, if I had to say an average, these people are kind of all across. I was working with someone who's living, I know she's living in a very rural low cost of living. And she's kind of laid out for us. I'm looking for 12 brand deals in a year. I'm looking to have a floor of here's what I want those to be. And she wound up not even really sticking to that floor. We wound up, it didn't work out for the advertiser. The advertiser countered. So it's even like I'm trying to kind of reverse engineer from what she was asking for, where she would need to be. And there, that would be kind of a low 5 figures. But we also deal with influencers who live and work full-time in New York City, who I'm sure pull, I know they pull well over 6 figures because I've done mid 5-figure deals with them. And I know I'm not the only person doing a deal with them. I'm sure they do 5, 10, 15, 20 of those a year. And if I'm giving you 50 grand, we can do the math on how much that's adding up to. So I'd say there really isn't a typical. I think there's influencers who are doing it full time who are making 20, 25 grand. And I think there's people who are doing it who are obviously making into the millions. We are probably not too often dealing with the people making millions. We're more working with people who, if they're doing it full time, it's the tens or hundreds of thousands.
Now, Joe Rogan wants to know your name, I'm sure, though.
I'm sure he's doing just fine without me.
Yeah, I interviewed somebody the other day that was a digital nomad, and they made their living. They had done influencer work. They had done user-generated content work.
I had seen that, yes.
Do that? Are UGC people in your bailiwick?
Yeah, and that's becoming an increasingly big ask, and something that we're, even if brands aren't asking for it, we're trying to educate them on. Just as I was saying to you earlier, if a brand is coming to you with an ad, you're going to take it with a grain of salt. And just as I was saying, so many brands don't even have the patience to go play with TikTok for 20 minutes. It's not going to bite you, I promise. Your audience is there. And the biggest thing that I'm often educating brands on from my limited time that I spend on TikTok is you're constantly consuming content. It's not like Instagram where you're kind of looking at something and then you're going to move on to the next thing and you're kind of weighing, do I consume this or do I keep moving? Do I consume this or do I keep moving? It's being put in front of you and you're either going to consume it or keep moving. And there isn't time to think. It is a split-second reaction. It is a flick of a thumb. And, as a content consumer, I like it because even if 85% of it is crap, I can so quickly get to the 15% that it's a good fit for me and what I want to consume. But from an advertising standpoint, what I'm trying to educate the brands on is if I look and it's, me or it's you, I'm receptive to, okay, this is a person. I want to hear what they have to say, and it's either going to be a fit or it's not. And brands are so into, well, I just want to put my ad creative. Well, now if I flick and see a brand's highly published ad creative, I'm going to keep flicking and move on and go on with my day because I know that's an ad. Whereas again, if I see a me or a you or that woman who you're interviewing who's the UGC creator, I'm going to give it the time of day. And I think that's something we're trying to teach brands is you should not be taking your TV ads and putting them on TikTok. You should be working with, a me, a you, or a UGC creator like that other person you interviewed to get them to be the face to, if nothing more, get someone to stop and give you the time of day and hear out what the offer is. I was saying to my business partner, this works so well. There was one time I was on Instagram. I saw something. I'm like, oh, it's a UGC thing. But I watched the whole thing. I remember the ad. I remember all the talking points of it. And it's a product I might buy. Whereas if it were just, hey, here's our flashy TV ad. No, I know it's an ad. I'm going to skip it.
That's pretty true. I would tell you this particular digital nomad that I spoke of had another wrinkle in her lifestyle. She would actually move around the globe and live in homes as a home sitter, taking care of the dog, taking care of the plants while people were on their extended vacations. So she lived all around the world basically for free doing digital nomad. She could go where it snows.
Yep.
And go skiing, or she could go down to the beach and spend some time. She had total freedom, which that's what we're all about, isn't it? Just figuring out how to be free, how to move around and enjoy life.
That's right. Otherwise, why are we here?
How does somebody get into the influencer space? That's the last question about that, the business of influencer marketing. How do you get into that?
We fell into it. We were doing SEO and we were very good at it. And, just really the big thing in 2013 was creative ways to get authoritative sites on your topic to link to your website. And we happen to have an awesome resource in-house. And her part of what she was doing is kind of going out and finding these sites, and we really just happened to walk by her desk and stumbled on the fact one day that she was an awesome artist, and she kind of as a hobby loved graphic design, and for some reason never told us this. And we said, look, we didn't hire you to do this. We're not going to force you to do it. But if you want, do you want to do some graphic design? And she, excuse me, she became so good at taking information and depicting it graphically that we got really into designing great infographics for our brands. And we turned to a brand and we said, look, as part of your SEO strategy, what we'd love to do is we'll go out, we'll pick a topic, what categories, do you need more links to? We will go do some research on those things. One, I remember blenders was one and juicers was one. And I learned so much about blending and juicing during this exercise that I will never forget. And we distilled all of this information into this graphic, and we reached out and we just reached out to bloggers who were talking about living a healthy lifestyle and said, hey, we want to give you all of this information that you can publish in one graphic. It's totally free. It's on behalf of XYZ brand. Will you publish it? And tons of people said yes. And hey, this is cool. We're going to do this and we love it. And we're working with this brand and it's free. And some people were like, well, what's in it for me, from a monetary compensation? And, we were just getting paid to do SEO, but it's a household name brand. We had a Staples across the street. We said, well, we'll give you a gift card from the brand. And we were just buying the gift cards from the brand at Staples. And we would write them a thank you card, put it in and send it. And they oh my God, I got a $25 gift card from this brand that I loved. And that was our first foray. And we did this and we learned so much about the value of these relationships. And during our end presentation, we're presenting this brand and we're so proud of, we got you the links. We did it. We checked the box. We did exactly what you hired us to do. But let us talk about all of these other, we got attention and we were able to measure using advertising pixels how long people were on the site and how much attention we captured. And the sentiment of comments, and people are going to shift from other brands to your brand. And they were like, no, we don't care about any of this. Just tell us more about these links you got us. I was like, oh, yeah, we can do that. And it just opened our eyes to, okay, you don't care about this because your department's goal is just to get links. And we understand that. We have to respect that. But someone out there is going to love this. And from a programmatic standpoint, it opened my eyes to kind of working with and writing crawlers of how can we go out and crawl the web and find, if we worked with these bloggers, who are they linking to? Who are those bloggers linking to? How can we get all their email addresses? And how can we introduce ourselves? We had someone who would do phone calls with every single person every single blogger that we found. She would offer, hi, let's jump on a phone call. Let me understand your blog. Let me understand your audience. Let me understand you. What are you looking for? And that's how we fell into this. We were looking to build backlinks, and we found all of this value that the brand didn't see, but we were like, screw you. And we see it. And that helped us understand the value of bloggers and social media. And we then had a brand who was doing TV ad buys who came to us and said, can we give you some TV ad budget? Can you work with some YouTubers? And luckily, again, they had big enough budgets that we were able to say, oh my God, we did this. We did adequate testing. We learned, here's our successes, here's our failures, here's everyone in between. But the successes, delivered hundreds of thousands of dollars in measured sales for them. So they don't care about the failures as long as the whole thing isn't a failure. They were absolutely thrilled. And that led us to, how can we do this for people with smaller budgets? And that opened our eyes to Instagram and Instagram stories. And really the rest is history. We've been buying sponsorships on YouTube, Instagram, and again, now TikTok or whatever the platform of the month is, way back since 2013, purely because we fell into it.
A great story. I enjoyed learning all about that from you. And, the validation really comes when I watch my grandson. He sits here in front of the big TV and he wants not to watch cartoons. No, he wants to go to YouTube and jump around and look at all the Roblox and all the things on YouTube. So he's got his favorite channels and he'll go through and just surf them all day long. And he's
I talk to people. I don't know how typical of a consumer I am, but we look at our profile of streaming services, and obviously of the Disney Plus. Now they're all unbundled, and the Disney and the Peacock and the Hulu and the Netflix and this and that. My absolute favorite streaming service that I pay for is YouTube, because not only can I learn so much from it, there's so much free education, there's so much entertainment. And I just love that. Like, I pay for it. So when I'm watching it, not only do I not see ads, but YouTube takes part of my money and gives it to the people who made the content. And I think that's so cool. Is like, obviously I'm going to watch movies on Netflix and YouTube with my wife all the time. But like during my downtime, when she's watching your normal TV show right now, she's watching Succession. I have 3 YouTube tabs pulled up over here. I'm trying to understand reviews of a certain software. I'm watching reviews of different types of flights, and I'm going somewhere in February and I'm watching, well, what should I be doing I'm going to Amsterdam? What should I be seeing in Amsterdam? And I think that's just so cool of where the attention has shifted from exactly like, you could just sit in front of, I used to be homesick and watch Bob Barker, The Price is Right. And now it's, well, I have so much control over what I want to watch because there's so much exciting, user generated content out there.
Yeah, one thing I really enjoy is my wife might be watching a Hallmark movie on the TV, and I've got my Bluetooth in, listening to something on YouTube, and I'm going, "Oh, that's great, good movie."
Yeah.
Well, it's very good having this conversation. I wanted to ask you, give us a little insight about your advice to young people. If you're looking back at yourself when you were 20 years old, what would you say before you got into the influencer marketing? What's the advice you'd give to yourself?
Oh man, it was so funny. I actually just kind of had this real opportunity present itself. I'm 33 and I've been in this business since I left college and was just kind of without graduating, just dove right into the advertising space when I was 19. So when I was 20, I was doing this, and I have a friend who's 23 who I was spending some time with recently, and he's brilliant. And it's so weird because it's like spending time with my younger self. And I'm like, he's so brilliant, he's so mature, and he's so out of his time. And then he'll do something that's just so unbelievably stupid. I was just talking to a colleague of mine who is, I want to say 10 or 20 years older than me. And I was telling him about so I know this guy and he's so smart. And then this is what he did. And I turned to him and I said, I'm not even going to tell you what you did, why it was stupid, because you're going to think I'm the bad guy. And my friend who's older than me cracked up laughing. He goes, and you know this because I said, because you would tell me things when I was 20 and I made you the bad guy. And now I look at him like, oh no, that's stupid. And that's the exact thing I would have done. So I say all that to say, be confident without being cocky. You're very smart, but you still don't know it all. You're smart, but you're not as smart as you think you are. And it really pays to listen to the people around you. And my grandfather just passed, and he had a great saying that I think is just so on the money, that he told me many times leading up to being 20. And I'm sure when I was 20, and I would have benefited from taking a little more to heart, which is, I never learned something while my mouth was open. And, if you're the one doing all the talking and dominating the conversation, you're not listening to all of the feedback that is being presented to you. And again, if it's funny seeing it play out, I'm seeing my friend and I'm like, oh, it's such a bad decision, but you'll learn from it. And I told him, I was like, in 10 years, I'm going to tell you what it was. But it's just, I knew I wouldn't be receptive to that feedback, and I know he wouldn't be receptive to that feedback. So if I could go back and turn back the time, I would say be receptive to the feedback.
Excellent. I totally agree with you there. And that's one reason I don't speak much on the Influencers podcast, because I'm listening, and it's a great seat to be on the listening side. The hot seat is where you're sitting, and we learn a lot. The audience learns a lot, and it's been very valuable today. Looking back and remembering what you accomplished over your years, what do you want to be remembered for?
I mean, I've just been so in the weeds in my career. But outside of that, I love just kind of solving problems, and again, seeing opportunities where there's an opportunity to solve a problem, outside of the marketing world, but I am that problem solver. So I would really just hope, I really don't care if I'm remembered for something in the business world. It's business. We're all here to make really, really rich companies just that much richer. And I remind myself that daily. But outside of the business world, if there was someone I made an impact on, there was my mom grew up when I was growing up. My mom had a very severe chronic health condition that she still has, and I spent a lot of times in hospitals. And the hospital by us is beautiful. It's excellent. They've given her the best care. I've spent a lot of time in the waiting room of the operating room. And I was just there recently, and uh one thing that they had was I call it a rich hospital. It's in a very good neighborhood, and they have very generous donors, and they had iPads. And I said, this is so amazing, because it's the simplest thing of my loved one is having something very, very serious done. My dad recently just had open heart surgery, and I had to sit around for 12 hours. And all you do is sit around and what's going on? And it was supposed to be 6 hours. Why are we in hour 7? Why are we in hour 8? And you just think about the worst. And luckily, their staff is great. And I could talk to them, and they were like, "Oh, if this doctor, he takes his time, it's normal, whatever." But these simple iPads, and I just, that always stuck with me of, this is brilliant that someone put these here to just take your mind off of, oh my God, my loved one's in surgery. They're with professionals, they're doing great, and they don't know what's going on. It's going to be okay, but your mind doesn't tell you that. So just something to quiet your mind is such a simple luxury. And again, I call myself a frequent flyer there. I tell them, if I come and my mom's had 10 surgeries, I think I should have a punch card, and I should get like a free salad from the cafeteria. I have to have a little levity on such a serious topic. But one time I went and the iPads were gone, and I passed a really rude remark, and I said, "Oh, what is it, the budget cuts?" And I'm so glad someone said to me, "No, actually they were stolen." I said, "Oh man, I'm glad I said something, because I'm just going to sit here and assume, well, the hospital was like, oh, we're going to sell these and just kind of pocket the money." And it was a holiday time several years ago, and I wound up reaching out to them and saying, look, this has brought me happiness and has calmed me down, and I'm sure it works for other people. Can I just take some money and donate, to have these replaced? And it what does it add up to? I think it was like $1,000. It's such an inconsequential amount of money. There's nothing I can donate to the medical field for $1,000 that's going to cure cancer or solve AIDS or do anything big. But if I could be remembered for something, it's seeing that problem of, God, I get it. I've sat in that waiting room for so long, and just having that distraction. And I think that's where, you can take a little bit of money and have such an outweighed impact. That money is going such a long way. I was there, and I love getting to see them and to talk to the staff, and they're like, people use them. They sit here and they're stressed, and they gravitate towards them, and all of a sudden they're a little bit less stressed. So for me, if my problem solving can be applied to making people a little happier, I think is far better than making corporations a little bit richer.
Well, you definitely made a difference, and that's a really good personal note to finish on. And I really do appreciate what you're sharing with us today. How can we connect to you or support you, and people can get to find out more about Blue Polo Interactive?
You can obviously find me on LinkedIn, Michael Pomposello. My name is very correctly spelled all over the lower third of this podcast. I can be reached at michael@bluepolointeractive.com, and check out our site, bluepolointeractive.com, where we lay out all of our services as well as our influencer services, which we've kind of rolled Influencer Connect into our parent brand.
Very good. Thank you for doing that. And give us a little hint. Did we do okay today? Do we have fun?
I had a great time. It was an absolute pleasure chatting with you. Love the questions. I love that I was able to prep a little bit, and this was great. I really recommend coming on the show.
Thanks so much, Michael. And I want to give you the final word before we close out to the audience.
I would say, the two things that I think we touched on were, if you're going to do advertising, do it right, have the budget, be open to new things, be open to testing, and don't forget to have fun, because if you're not having fun, then why are we here? We're not just here to make the big companies a little bit richer. We're here to have a good time as well. And I love that story you tied in with the woman who is the digital nomad. I think she's absolutely nailed having fun. And I think that's what we got to do. And we have to keep ourselves reminded to have fun.
Thank you so much, Michael. That was wonderful. People will really enjoy this. Our particular audience, and our audience is in 190 countries around the world, and we are on being entrepreneurs. We're in the affiliate marketing arena. Most of us, we all are influencers, and we would love to be able to learn more about how to be a better influencer marketer as a group. This QR code that I've got put on my side here is a link to my digital business card. So you can find me. It goes to this address where you can see two things. Basically, it's where the rest of the influencer podcast live on my website, drbillwilliams.tv. And you can see Michael's interview put up there later on this week. And you'll also see 120 other interviews that we've done this year. So go there if you're interested and want to be on the podcast even. There's also things on there that are related to our AI business. We have connections to many things in the AI technology, URL shorteners and video conferencing, and even something that's called Fast Car Magulus. Fast Car. You ever heard of Fast Car Magulus? It's an auto club for $1 million plus cars.
I have not, and I don't have $1 million plus cars, so that's probably why.
Well, I tell you what, they're fun to watch in parade. Just to see 100 of them go by and wonder how do the people actually afford to buy these cars? They're probably all influencer marketers, if you ask me. Yeah. I don't know. One thing we have is very interesting I would share is tracking ability for any website. This might be perfect for influencer marketers to kind of get a sense of how they're doing on their website. So this is like Google Analytics on steroids.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty phenomenal, pretty slick, and has all the AI built into it so that it's easy to understand the data. So I would just put that out there that anybody that's interested, just go to this and look it up, check it out. It's free to look at it, get a free download to see how it looks. And everybody who's on the audience, there's a lot of free things we have available and some that are paid products. So that's my commercial for our podcast, is just to get people to look at what's available. Once you look at it, you probably can't sleep, because one of the things we do is we pay people through our affiliate program, and you get 100% of your first sale. So once you get it, you're on the money immediately. So that's kind of the fun part about being on the Influencer Podcast. I get to talk about what I do at the very end. Michael, it's been really good having you on, and I appreciate you for sharing such good information about the Influencer Connection. That's important to our group, so I know this is going to be a very popular podcast. Hundreds of thousands of people are going to watch this podcast.
Excellent. Thanks so much again.
You bet. You guys take care in the audience. We'll talk to you soon.